Howdy, and welcome back to yet another Workshop Wednesday. Today's category is Beyond Basics. Remember, we flip these out each and every week. This week, it's all about Beyond Basics. We're talking about using calculated metrics in Google Analytics. Welcome. First and foremost, my name is Chris Mercer. I actually do go by Mercer, and I'm the co-founder here at measurementmarketing.io, where you can find us maybe from some of the podcasts or talks that we've given. Maybe you came in through some of the other platforms that we work with, Digital Marketer, CXL Institute, Social Media Examiner. Maybe you're already a member over at measurementmarketing.io. However you found us, welcome. Love having you here. My job is to help people like you learn how to use tools like analytics and Tag Manager to figure out how to actually take these numbers, make them make sense to the point where they naturally lead to actions. And we do that by using the measurement marketing framework. So we're going to cover this very quickly because it'll help put today's training into context. So we have planning, building, reporting, forecasting, and optimizing. Now with calculated metrics, it is important when you're going through the planning process to think about what questions you're trying to answer and what information you need to get those answers. And in some of that information stage, a calculated metric might be something you're going to use. Obviously, in the build out definitely comes into play because you have to build them into the system, which I'll show you how to do in this workshop. The reports, you need to create custom reports to access them. So I'm going to show you that as well. And then you can actually start using them to forecast and ultimately to optimize the results that you're getting. So that's how calculated metrics will actually help you in this process as you move through the measurement marketing pillars. Now, with all of these workshops, remember the goal is one thing, especially if this is completely new to you, because you want to be able to practice, get a skill, practice something. Then you come back, rewatch this workshop. That's why we make them available, so that you can pack a new skill on top of that. So just grab one thing you can practice, maybe one new way of hearing something, practice that skill, then come back, rewatch this, and grab another new skill. All right, here we go. Beyond Basics, using calculated metrics in Google Analytics. First, we're going to dive into Google Analytics. That is where we all like to live. So I'm going to pull up ours, and you're going to see kind of what ours looks like. Now, I'm going to point out the first why to use calculated metrics. And the most obvious spot, the one that I would recommend that you set up for yourself, is in your e-commerce section. So we're going to go into e-commerce and overview and take a look at what ours currently reports back there. So in the e-commerce section, and I'm going to focus on one particular metric, one particular number, and that is this right here, this e-commerce conversion rate. This is by far the biggest misconception that exists in, I think, the numbers universe, certainly in the analytics universe. Generally speaking, your clients, your boss, your stakeholders, maybe even you up until this point, have thought this is how many people are converting. But that is not what this is. So you think, well, okay, I got to use analytics terms. So we're going to say how many users are converting. But that is also not what this is. This is actually how many sessions are converting. And that's the rub with Google Analytics, is that everything in Google Analytics is session-based. It's not user-centric. It's not user-focused. All these metrics are based on sessions, not on users. So out of all of the different sessions that were started, all of the different visits that came to the site, this is how many of those visits actually came into a conversion rate or actually caused a conversion, this percentage, which again is not technically all that useful if you think you're looking at one thing, but really you're looking at something else. And that's where calculated metrics can come into play because there is no metric in Google Analytics. There is no number in Google Analytics that tells you what the conversion rate is for each user. Now, you might figure that out in something like Data Studio or a spreadsheet, but you don't have to. You can use Google Analytics for that. I'm going to show you actually where we have done this. So I'm going to go into a custom report that I've already built. I'm just going to show it to you, and then we'll kind of deconstruct all of this so you can see this. And we'll set some of these up and build these again so you can see it. But I want to kind of show you the first parts first. So as I come through here, I see this little e-com report that I have set up. So I'm going to click here. And in this e-commerce report, I have a custom report, same date range that we're still looking at. I just did it where it's broken down by source medium, and I can see the number of sessions. I can see the number of users. I can see the number of transactions, all associated to the different traffic sources coming through in their mediums. And then I have, and this is to show you the difference between the e-commerce conversion rate, which we just saw was 0.41 site-wide. And then this is our calculated metric. This is where we told Google Analytics, okay, I want you to instead calculate this by saying, okay, it's the number of transactions divided by the number of users, not by the number of sessions. I want you to use users instead of sessions. And so you notice our conversion rate's higher. Why? Because there's less users than sessions, which makes sense, right? Of course, because users will come back And I don't want the same user coming back, maybe as in our case, we're a membership site. So users come back and they watch our courses and they involve the membership, and those aren't supposed to cause a transaction. So all these extra sessions that are not really there to cause a transaction mess up our conversion rate. They don't give us a useful truth, right? Remember, measurement marketing, it's all about getting a useful truth so you can do something with it. Well, if I think my conversion rate, and I'm thinking that's defined as users who are converting, if I think less than 0.5% of my users are converting, that's very different than almost 1% of my users are converting, just overall, okay? Then break that down by traffic source, and you start seeing things like, okay, well, this is actually almost double my direct none. Look at my email. If I think 1/3 of percentage of my users are converting. Now, remember, not every single time a user is coming to the site, like in our case with a membership site. So you can segment this and you can break it down and say, I want to pull out my members and just look at my marketing pages or whatever else. This is just overall to give you. But look at the difference. 29 versus 63. That's double. So my conversion rate doubled because this is the reality. So a lot of times people look at this e-commerce conversion rate, think this is users, and then treat it as such, when in reality it's double. So if I'm at a mastermind or a group where I'm sharing my numbers with somebody else who's using analytics, and maybe they're using calculated metrics, let's say you and I were talking and there was calculated metrics that I was using, and I said, well, and you said, well, what should I expect for an average email? And I might say, well, figure about 0.75%, 0.6, 0.7% is going to convert. Let's just say that was the number. And you were like, wow, I'm only seeing 0.3. Well, we could be totally talking about two different things. I'm using a calculated metric, which uses users, and you might be looking at your sessions, and that's unique to you. And that's going to give you not a useful truth. This is the biggest reason calculated metrics exist. That's why they were created. That's why Google allows them into Google Analytics. It's built in. Now, I also put here transactions per user because people get confused with this because it is a user-based metric, and it's the number of transactions for each user. But again, it's not going to be particularly useful unless you're looking at a subsection of just people who bought or something along those lines about e-commerce transactions themselves. But this at least gives you the idea, okay? And again, I would still create a segment and say, show me a segment of revenue. In fact, let's just do that. Why not? I'm going to show you this. We're going beyond basics, right? So if I come in here and I just type for like revenue, actually, it's not even do that. Purchases, I think it's called here. Transactions, maybe. There we go. Sessions with transactions. So we'll do that. That'll by default give me the users. So I should see, if I separate this out now, I should be able to see my custom report. And I'm going to take out all users, just drag and drop that out of the way so I can just see this one thing, make it a lot easier. So obviously a lot less sessions and everything else coming through here. But I can see, all of this is going to equal 100%. Why? Because I'm just looking at sessions. So of course, all these sessions converted at 100%, all these e-commerce visits converted at 100%, right? Because it's just looking at sessions and users, right? So you can play around with segments as you actually go through here. Let's pull another one up. I'm going to come in here and let's say we're just looking at... I don't even know. Let's just make something else up. Let's do paid traffic. So we'll do share. Nope. Let's do this. Let's do Facebook. I thought I had one for Facebook. Let's say we didn't. I'm going to do this instead. New segment. We're going to create it on the fly. This is like an extra bonus lesson you're going to get on segmentation here very quickly, of course. How many traffic sources? Let's say CPC. It's all my paid traffic. So if I do this and we say CPC traffic, I'm positive I have this back there too. This is probably going to create many more sessions for me or segments, but that's okay. So I'm going to create that little segment. I'm just looking at my paid traffic and I'm going to say my paid traffic converts. Now paid traffic, presumably the point of that traffic is to convert, because why am I paying to have somebody come back to the site otherwise? So I can get a little more useful truth. So I'm going to pull this back because again, that sessions per transaction is not so useful. It's kind of like, well, of course, anybody with a session with a transaction is converting because they wouldn't be in that list otherwise. But this one's a little different. We should get a little different. And we'll find out maybe if anything ever converted. It didn't convert at all. I didn't have anything convert, right, to this. So it's like, all right, not so useful, right? There's all my paid traffic. And this is, in this case, I think it was, what did I set up as probably users or sessions with paid traffic. So I'm not really seeing anything convert. Not all that useful. But my point is you can segment this, right? Use it for your own case. And if I was doing this for real, I would spend some time thinking through my segments, probably a little bit better than what I just did. But it's the idea of being able to show this to you. And really, what really, really matters is I remove this. Is going back to, let's get out of this whole thing. I just want to remove this and go back to users. I want to just to show you the difference that's behind here, which is why calculated metrics exist in the first place. There's a huge difference for some of these. Okay, now, how do we actually go forth and do this? I'm going to go into admin. This is where this is. I go into admin. You go into your view, because they're specific to your view. You go to calculated metrics, again, to your view. Just like goals and filters are specific to your view, so are these. Click on where it says calculated metrics. Now, this has been beta as of this recording for years. So I don't know what's taking them so long to get it out of beta, but it's been around for a long time now. So it's going to stay around, I would assume. Here is where we set this metric up. So I'm going to click here just to show you how we did it. And then we're going to create one together. We'll create a few different ones together so you can see them all. So first, just put in the name. That's the label. You can change this at any point that you want. You could literally call this Bugs Bunny, and it will show Bugs Bunny in your reports. So that's a pretty cool little feature. So don't worry about getting this right. Then this will create automatically. This sort of creates a little thing in the database of analytics. You don't have control too much over that. So you don't have to worry too much about this. When you set it up, it stays this, whatever it was. You can see in this case, it pulled the original name. They called it e-commerce user conversion. I changed it to e-commerce conversion user rate for users to make it easier. So this is more of like the public facing label. In the reports, you're going to see this. This is the backend database of how it all gets connected. So that you can't ever change. Then you can say, well, this metric should be a floating metric, an integer, currency, time, or percent. In this case, I wanted a percentage. So we flip it to percent. And then it's, what do you want me to do? Okay, I want you to take transactions. And this kind of is like variables are in Google Tag Manager for those that are using Tag Manager. Same sort of idea. You take transactions and I'm dividing them by users. Pretty simple stuff, right? Not overly complicated. So the only other thing, I'm going to cancel out of this real quick. The only other thing that you have to do in order to see them is there's only one way to do that, and that is a custom report. So I created this custom report that you and I just saw. So if I go to e-commerce reports and I go to edit that report, I created this custom report with all these different metrics in there. I had to pull in, there's e-commerce conversion rate. This is the regular one. You see where I hover over it. And then there's this one. E-commerce conversion rate users. So this is me pulling this in. It doesn't naturally show up in any built-in report because it wasn't a built-in metric. So the only way for you to see your calculated metrics is either create a custom report in Google Analytics like we're doing here, or of course you would have access to it in Data Studio or something like that if you're building a dashboard. And the reason that I like using calculated metrics is because Google Analytics, which is really good at calculating and adding and doing the arithmetic stuff, I have it do as much of the number crunching as possible. That way Google Data Studio can just display the stuff and Data Studio doesn't have to do number crunching. Because if it has to do calculations, it slows down a little bit because it's just not perfect at that. It's really good for displaying stuff. So I try to minimize the number crunching that Data Studio does. And again, not eliminate it because it's really good at some stuff, but I try to eliminate where I can. And this is one of those places where I totally can. So again, custom report is how you actually display it in Analytics or of course, Data Studio. Now let's talk about how to set up some new ones. I'm gonna give you some examples of ones you might want to set up. Our Academy members, by the way, will also have a list of a bunch of other ones that you can get access to. But I'll show you some other ones and just think through your use cases, right? Not all of these mean that you have to set these up because actually I'm gonna point this out. You only have 5. So it says 4 here because I only created 1. Yours, if you create this, there's nothing there. It'll say 5 calculated metrics left. You only have 5. So we're going to go ahead and create another one that I think would be actually useful. And this is one that is kind of the bounce rate question, right? People think about bounce rate and it's like, okay, wait, is a bounce rate, if it goes higher, is it good? Is it goes lower if it's good? What is it? Well, technically with a bounce rate, the higher it is, the worse it is because they are bouncing. So it's one of those oddball metrics where the bigger the number, the worse it is. So like with a conversion rate, when you say, oh, they convert at 47%, it's good. If they convert at 67%, it's better, right? Bigger the number, the better the thing is. But with bounce rate, it's the opposite. So let's create kind of this opposite bounce rate thing. So I'm gonna do that. We're gonna create the kind of the inverse of bounce rate. So I'm gonna call it, for fanciness, I'm gonna say through rate. This is how many people actually you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do better. I'm gonna call it engagement rate. So this is our engagement rate. Now notice here, I can change this if I want to identify it in a certain way for whatever reason. Maybe you're technically proficient in the back end of analytics and you want to name this for a specific reason. If that is not you, if it is you, you already know what you can do here. So I don't really have to tell you. But if it's not you, if you're like, what does that even mean? Don't even worry about it. You don't need it. So it'll automatically create something for you. And then we're going to say, okay, I want this to be, in this case, a percentage. Okay, so we're going to make it a percentage. And then how are we going to define that? So what this is going to be is we're going to do this. It's a little bit like math. So I know I need my sessions in this case because bounce rate is calculated by sessions. So I kind of need to do that. So we're going to come in here. I'm just going to type in sessions. So we're going to say sessions and it does this little thing here, right? So just type, you could just type it in, but I'm going to, we're just kind of doing the drop down. And then it's, okay, sessions minus those that were bounces. So it's the total number of sessions minus the total number that were bounces. So at this point, we should be left with sessions that did not bounce. That's what this is basically telling us. And then we need to divide that by, so we're just doing a little division symbol here. We're going to divide that again by the total number of sessions that were there. So it'll be the sessions, instead of the sessions that bounced divided by sessions, which is what bounce rate is, it's the sessions that did not bounce divided by sessions. Now there's only one other thing we need to add here, and this is a little bit of your algebra skills. You gotta remember that from 8th grade or 7th grade or 9th grade, whatever it was for you. As you're coming through here, you need to group this together because we want this to happen first. So little parentheses, group it together just like, old school math. So sessions minus bounces happens first. Then whatever that answer is, which in this case would be sessions without bounces, divided by total number of sessions equals the percent we're looking for. That's what should happen. Remember, in analytics, it's the most important question to be asking yourselves. What should happen before you do it? Here's what should happen. That's how you learn stuff. So we're going to create this, and this is what should happen, is that we have this nice little engagement rate now instead of bounce rate. Now, how do I know if that worked? I really can't go into a built-in report and see, so I have to create a custom report, which I'm going to do. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go into our custom reports, and we're going to pull this up. I'm just going to pull up our e-commerce report. I'm now going to change this, and we're going to edit this a little bit. And I'm going to call this, instead of e-commerce report, I'm going to say Mercer's calculated metric demo report, because that's just more useful. So we're going to do that. So there's a little e-commerce tab where we talked about that. I'm going to add a reporting tab here. Look at all the lessons you're getting, also in custom reports here. So I'm going to change this. We're going to call this bounce, or technically engagement. That's what we're measuring for. So the metric group, I'm going to say add a metric first is my users. I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to do sessions. So total number of sessions. And I'm going to say total number of users. I just like seeing both of them over and over again. So users and sessions. And then we're going to add in bounce rate, which is the one that's built in. But then I also want to see my new thing, which was engagement rate that I created. See under other engagement rate, that's the calculated metrics. And I've got all that. And then of course, I'm just going to break this down by anything, but I'll put in here source medium. So we have that. Okay. So we're going to save this report. So we're expanding out our custom report a little bit here. So now I've got my e-commerce. Now let's click to engagement, which I clearly misspelled, but we'll fix that later. So I come in here. Here's my engagement. Sessions, users, engagement by traffic source. So I can see bounce rate. Here's how many people bounced. Here's my engagement, which I think is I really like this actually as a calculated metric. I'm going to roll this out to all of our production platforms because it's positive. Instead of like, how many people don't like you, which is kind of what the bounce rate is telling you, it's how many people engaged, which I think is more useful. It's a more positive way of looking at it. And now you can do this in analytics. So you have this, and then of course I could use that in Data Studio and everything else. And I just think this is more useful. It's also why I don't like cart abandonment rate as a metric, because it's negative. Like, come on, let's just talk about how many people made it through. That's what's important. So here's our engagement rate, and I can see by traffic source. I could do it by landing page, right? I could technically do a secondary dimension and do it by traffic source and landing page, right? All that fun stuff. But now I have the ability to do things like this with my engagement rate. So it's a cool calculated metric that you can do. Now, let's talk about another one of those metrics. And this will be the last one because there's a lot of stuff that you can sort of think through that makes sense for you. Let's say you're more like content marketer and you're trying to figure out engagement stuff. And bounce rate, for sure, the engagement rate, I should say, is better for that. But let's talk about another one. If I come into, let's see, all pages, I think this will have it for me. So where we talk about, oh no, I take that back. It'll be landing pages. Let's go to landing pages. And we want to talk about the number of pages in a session. And landing pages is kind of a session-based thing, all right? So sessions with these landing pages, and we go to pages per session. But that has the same problem as pages per user, right? Maybe I want to see it by user. Now, I like actually pages per session. I think a lot of times it's, okay, what happened in this visit, and is that what was supposed to happen? And there is definitely a use case for this session-based methodology that Google Analytics uses. So it's great that they do that. But maybe, again, you're thinking about it more at a user level. Well, how do you get pages per user? There is no pages per user until now, because we're going to go into admin. We're going to go into our calculated metrics, and then we're going to create a new calculated metric. And this one is going to be pages per user. So we're going to make this I'm just going to do pages per user, just like that. Kind of how it was displayed. Remember, this is just a label. I can change it whenever I want. In this case, we're going to keep it floating. So it's got decimal points to it, right? So it's 1 point whatever, as opposed to if an integer would just be 1, 2, 3, it was sort of round, but float is what we're going to have. So it has decimal points. Then we're going to do our formula, which is relatively simple here. Now remember, pages per user. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to do page views here divided by users. And this is how we get it. Click users. Or again, you could just type it in if you get really good at that, right? Page views, divided by users. And that's going to give us our pages per user. So we're going to create that. Now again, how do we know if it worked? We really don't. We got to go do a custom report to see. And what also is cool, by the way, if you haven't noticed this, popular question that we get around this particular thing, does this retro back? And the answer is yes, it does, because these custom reports would all show 0 for these metrics. But it went back into the database and it recalculated everything and created this new thing, which is really awesome. So we're going to go to the demo report here. We're going to edit this. First thing I want to do, because I know it bugs me, is I'm going to go to engagement and correct that. Then we're going to go to, I'm going to duplicate this tab this time. We're going to change this one to page report. And now we're going to say sessions, users, and then I'm going to do bounce rate, and I'm going to take that out, and we're going to take out engagement rate. And instead, I'm going to do pages per session, and then pages, this time per user. As I scroll down, we should see that at our bottom under other pages per, where is it? Pages per user. Let me just do this. Pages, didn't have enough in there. There we go. Pages per user. So we're doing that one. So pages per session and per user. This time instead of source medium, I'm just going to do landing page report. So we'll do landing pages, and that's it. So we'll take this one out, just do landing page, keep it simple. So now I've got my landing page, kind of a new landing page style report. So I'm going to go to page report now. So in this tab of our custom report, I've just created it. There's my landing pages, sessions, number of users that hit that landing page, and pages per session here, but pages per user here. So now we start to get a little bit more of an interesting concept of how the users might be using our site, user level using our site, which is super useful. So that's just a few examples of calculating metrics, what and why. So now that you know they exist, I have to ask you this question. What was your one thing? Was it that they exist? Was it, wow, I never thought about that as a use case. That's kind of interesting. Was it that concept of, well, I've been doing that in Data Studio or a spreadsheet, but maybe it's easier to do it in analytics, so it's kind of done at the source of the data source itself, and then it gets pushed into the other platforms. And again, maybe just some of the ideas that you had in thinking through stuff, sessions versus users. Maybe you never realized that e-commerce conversion rate is not based on users, because it makes sense that it is, because it doesn't say something like pages per session. It's not e-commerce per session conversion rate. It doesn't say that. It just says e-commerce conversion rate, because back in the day, that's all they had was sessions. But now that we have this user thing to play with, calculating metrics come in really, really handy. All right. So no matter what your one thing was, if you are looking to improve your measurement marketing skills, you want to learn more about analytics and Tag Manager, Data Studio, leveling this stuff up, and ultimately turning it into actionable marketing results, measure.tips/Get Academy. I want you to go there, take a look at that page, see if it's something that's right for you. And if it is, we'll look forward to seeing you back there at the Measurement Marketing Academy. Now, next week's topic for Workshop Wednesday, we switch topics each and every week. Next week, it's a strategy sessions. That's the category we're covering, strategy sessions. That's really for those of you who are maybe not in the implementation side of things. Like today is definitely for those of you who are implementing things in Google Analytics. But if you're not the implementer of your team and setting up all your measurement, you still need to use it. So using Google Analytics channel reports to guide your marketing strategies, what we're going to talk about, and the strategies behind that. Remember, if you want to have access to that, there are only two ways to really do that. First, subscribe to this, right? Subscribe, make sure that you get notified, and it'll send you a little notice. Many of you are already doing that. Thank you for that. We see new subscriptions almost every day now, which is fantastic. So thank you for helping spread the word. Leave the comments, by the way, too. We love those comments. But go ahead and subscribe, and that way you get notified when there are new videos available. Also, the other way to do this is the Measurement Marketing Academy Toolbox. It's something we call a Toolbox membership. You can become a Toolbox member. You get the Workshop Wednesday, which is this. So every week we have the latest Workshop Wednesday back there. But then you also have all these other tools, and this is not all of them. There are literally 40 some odd tools back there, many of which are proprietary. We created them for our members. We give them out to the community. So the only thing we ask is that you just request it. You got to sign up for it. You can create your free Toolbox membership, but it is completely free. It doesn't cost you anything. So if you're just kind of like maybe not ready for the academy, but you want to kind of get your skills or at least see kind of how we do things, that's what I'd recommend. Go to the Toolbox. In order to go there, just go to measure.tips/WW. That will take you to the page where you can create your free Toolbox membership. Again, measure.tips/WW. All right. Finally, before we leave, and that's only because this is a little time sensitive, it is currently September 16th when I'm recording this. And in a little less than a week, I cannot believe it's almost here, September 22nd, measuresummit.com. MeasureSummit.com. Make sure you go there and you sign up for Measure Summit because it is seriously an incredible event. At this point, we have over almost 7,000, I think, as of now. That we've got. If not over, we're really, really close. So this is what the page looks like. Again, as of this recording, 5 days left-ish. Here's all the speakers. So anybody that's involved, you're Beyond the Basics crowd watching this. So you'll notice some of these people that are here. It's people I follow. I know people you follow. It's being hosted by myself and Julian over at Measure School. So we're working together on this little project. And it has been incredible. Like there's so much momentum and excitement around this that I want you to be there. So you'll see the agenda. We won't go through it all here. But take a look at it. MeasureSummit.com and make sure you take a look because it is just fantastic as an event. And that is where we will leave you on this particular workshop. So with that, we will go ahead and officially bring this one to a close. This has been Beyond Basics, using calculated metrics in Google Analytics. Thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you on the next workshop. Take care.